She's proof that not every child turns out right. The words came from my father's lips so easily, like a toast he had practiced. Everyone laughed. A few tried to hide it behind wine glasses, others didn't bother. They chuckled with their shoulders, with their eyebrows, with the sideways glances that stung far more than outright ridicule. I sat at the far end of the table, flanked by a potted fern and the swinging door to the kitchen. My glass was empty. No one had thought to fill it. The dining room smelled like cedar polish and overcooked beef. Candles flickered against the silverware, and the chandelier above trembled slightly every time someone shifted. 17 guests, all family. Not a single one looked at me when the laughter died down. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I stared at the condensation ring my water glass had left on the linen. It's strange what you remember in moments like that. I remembered being 7, showing my father a science fair ribbon. I remembered the way he nodded vaguely, then asked me to take out the trash. I remembered every time he introduced me to someone with, "This is Erica, she's figuring things out." Now I was 38, a guest in my childhood home, sitting in the same seat I sat in when I was 12, a place they thought I belonged. And yet, despite the years, despite the distance, despite everything I'd built, this moment still cut deeper than I'd imagined. What they didn't know was everything was about to change, and none of them would ever look at me the same again. It started young. I don't think my father ever meant to raise a daughter, at least not one like me. He wanted neatness, predictability, daughters who smiled on cue, wore dresses to church, married young and made potato salad for the 4th of July picnic. But I liked questions. I liked taking apart radios just to see how they worked. I liked numbers more than dolls, and I liked silence more than people. That, to him, was a threat, a disappointment. By the time I was 9, he had already stopped trying to understand me. He didn't yell, that would have been easy. Instead, he dismissed, shrugged. "That's just Erica being strange," he'd say whenever I tried to show him something I built. He never said I was stupid, but he didn't need to. Indifference can speak louder than insult. When I won first place at the regional science fair at age 11, I came home bursting. My teacher had hugged me. The judge called my prototype visionary. I held the blue ribbon like a medal of honor. My father looked at it, smiled faintly and said, "You still need to clean the garage." That moment lodged itself in my bones like a splinter. It only grew worse with time. My older brother Mark, football captain, business school darling, became the standard. He once joked, "At least I'm not trying to build a robot army in the basement." Everyone laughed. I didn't. Mostly because I had been doing exactly that. Then came my high school years. I applied to every STEM program I could find. One in particular, an early admission ROTC-linked engineering course, had written back. I was ecstatic. I told my family at dinner. No one said a word, not even my mother. My father kept cutting into his steak. Weeks later, the acceptance letter never arrived. I called the program. They said my application had been withdrawn. No explanation. No record of a request. I never told anyone, but part of me always wondered who made that call. College was my first escape. I chose a school 8 states away, not because it was the best fit, but because it was far. Far from the silence, the sideways glances, and the suffocating weight of never being enough. I studied aerospace engineering. The program was brutal. I failed my first thermodynamics exam. I cried in the library bathroom and told myself I would transfer, but I didn't. I stayed. I fought. I graduated second in my class, just behind a prodigy who now builds satellites for NASA. I never told my family, not because I didn't want them to know, but because they never asked. At some point, silence becomes mutual. I built my career in fragments, internships, research labs, small contracts with the military's R&D division. I worked 16-hour days, slept on floors, ate vending machine dinners. No one clapped for me, no one cheered. But every time I sent a completed design or coded a breakthrough, I imagined my father's voice. "She's just figuring things out." The difference was, I was. At 30, I was pulled into a black budget project with the Department of Defense. Classified, high level, I couldn't tell anyone, couldn't post photos, couldn't even describe where I worked. I existed in the margins of national defense, but I was proud. Every decision I made shaped lives, saved lives, and still not a word to my family. They thought I lived in a small apartment in Chicago, doing something techish. That's what my cousin once said. Erica works with computers or AI or whatever. The whole family just nodded. I stopped going home. Holidays passed, birthdays. My mother left voicemails. "It would mean a lot to your father if you came this year." But would it? What I never told them was this. I didn't just leave because I felt unwanted. I left because if I stayed, I would have shrunk into someone I no longer recognized. And I had worked too hard, bled too much for that. But as fate would have it, I'd be back at that table again. The same eyes, the same voices. Only this time, I wasn't the same woman they once dismissed. The envelope was cream-coloured, thick, and embossed with golden cursive. "You are cordially invited to the 70th birthday celebration of Mr. William Cole." I stared at it for a long time. It had arrived in an overstuffed mailbox, wedged between a grocery flyer and a notice from the Pentagon. I laughed when I saw it. Not because it was funny, but because it felt surreal, like someone had mailed a ghost. I hadn't stepped foot in that house in over 14 years. I'd skipped weddings, baby showers, Thanksgiving dinners. I sent flowers once when my cousin broke her leg. My name wasn't mentioned on their Christmas cards. I was a whisper in family stories, off doing her own thing. They made it sound like I had joined a cult. The invitation sat unopened on my kitchen counter for a week. Each night I'd walk past it, telling myself it wasn't worth it, that he didn't deserve my time, my presence, my oxygen. But then there was Mum. She had called, soft-voiced as always. "Your father? Well, it's a big milestone. Everyone's coming. He won't say it, but I think he hopes you will too." I didn't know what twisted me more, the hope in her voice, or the part of me that still wanted to be seen, not recognised, not praised, just seen. Like I was real. I stared at the date, the RSVP, the location that hadn't changed since I was born, the front porch that creaked, the pine tree I used to hide behind, the hallway that smelled like lemon polish and scorn. That house was still standing, but I wasn't the same girl who left it. I packed a single black dress, plain heels, no makeup, no jewellery. I didn't want them to think I was trying to impress anyone. But I did carry one thing they wouldn't see, clearance-level documents stored in my briefcase, marked with red stripes and security codes, proof of everything they didn't believe I could become. I didn't go back for him. I didn't go back for revenge. I went back because I wanted to look that place in the eye and no longer flinch. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Maybe it was the way the paint had faded on the shutters, or how the porch steps creaked louder beneath my heels. Or maybe it was just that I had finally grown beyond it. The front door opened before I could knock. My sister-in-law, Dana, stood there in an apron, holding a wooden spoon and wearing her ever-polite smile. "Erica," she said, stretching the name like taffy. "Wow, it's been years?" 14, I replied, stepping inside. The scent hit me first, lemon cleaner and roasted meat, layered with something sharp.
Nostalgia, maybe, or judgment. She led me into the foyer, her voice chirping behind me. "We weren't sure you'd come. Mark said you'd probably be busy with, your tech stuff." I didn't answer. My heels clicked softly against the tile as I took in the framed photographs lining the walls, Mark in his graduation robe, Dana holding their twins, family trips to places I was never invited. No one had bothered to update the photo of me.
It was still the same one from high school. Braces, awkward bangs, eyes too wide with hope. From the kitchen, voices filtered through, laughter, clinking glasses, the warm hum of togetherness. A gathering I had been added to like a footnote. "Here's your seat," Dana said, pulling out a chair at the end of the long dining table, the very end. It was wedged between the swinging door to the kitchen and a sideboard cluttered with serving trays. The chair cushions sagged. No name card, no wine glass, just a single napkin folded carelessly. I looked down the length of the table, Mark and Dana in the centre, their children beside them. My uncle next to my father. My mother across from him, her eyes darting up, then quickly away when they met mine. I sat without a word. Someone walked behind me carrying a gravy boat and bumped my shoulder without apology. I reached for the pitcher of water near the centrepiece. It was just out of reach. No one offered to pass it. The conversations flowed without me. Soccer schedules, business deals, a new grill someone just installed. Every once in a while a relative would glance my way, as if remembering I existed, then turn back to their wine and easier topics. Mark leaned over toward Uncle Dale, chuckling. "Remember when Erica used to program the microwave to play Beethoven? Thought she was going to work for NASA." Laughter bubbled from 3 directions. I smiled tightly, pretending I hadn't heard. Dana turned toward me with mock cheerfulness. "So, what do you do now? Still with computers?" The question was as pointed as it was hollow, not curiosity, performance. "I work with aerospace defense systems," I replied, keeping my tone flat. "Oh," she raised her brows dramatically. "Like drones and stuff?" Something like that, I thought, something classified beyond your comprehension. My niece, 16 and full of sparkle, whispered across the table, "Is that why you never post anything on Instagram?" I gave her a small nod. "Exactly," she giggled. "My mom says people who don't post are usually either boring or hiding something." Dana placed a hand gently on her daughter's wrist, like she was containing a wild animal, though her smile never wavered. "We're just glad you could join us this year. It means a lot to Dad." "Did it?" I looked across the table at my father. He hadn't said a word to me, not a glance, not a nod. He buttered his roll, said something to Mark, laughed at a joke I didn't catch. The longer I sat, the tighter the room felt, like the walls knew I didn't belong. I adjusted in my seat, the chair creaking beneath me, and reached again for the water pitcher, still too far. "Here," my mother said quietly, finally sliding it closer. Her hand trembled just slightly. Her eyes didn't meet mine. That small gesture, so late, so hesitant, landed heavier than it should have. I poured myself a glass and sipped. It tasted like dust, like years of swallowing silence. But I stayed seated, back straight, face unreadable, because something told me the worst hadn't come yet. The clinking of forks slowed, glasses refilled. Someone dimmed the lights slightly, and a hush rippled across the table as my father stood up, napkin folded neatly beside his plate. He didn't tap a glass. He didn't need to. When William Cole stood, people listened. He cleared his throat, placed both hands on the back of Mark's chair, and smiled. 70 years, he began, with the warm charm of a practiced orator. It's a strange thing getting older. You look back more than forward. You see not just your years, but your legacy, the people who carry your name. Heads nodded. The table leaned in, suspended in generational reverence.
My son Mark, he gestured, squeezing Mark's shoulder, built his own company from scratch. 3 kids, a house on the lake, and somehow still finds time to coach Little League. I couldn't be prouder. Applause erupted. Mark smiled, modest and polished. Dana kissed his cheek like they were on stage. My father moved to the next chair. My daughter-in-law Dana keeps this whole family running. You all know it. Organised every detail tonight. She's the glue. More claps. Another round of raised glasses. Dana waved it off theatrically. Oh, please, but she beamed all the same. He went down the line, nieces, nephews, even Uncle Dale for surviving a second hip surgery. Each one got a story, a laugh, a moment of warmth. Then his eyes reached mine, and the pause arrived. He didn't smile, he didn't even blink, just that brief, barely perceptible tightness in his jaw before he spoke. And then there's Erica. A longer pause this time. My name felt like a pebble dropped into a well, soft, distant, fading. She's done her own thing, always has. Marches to her own drum, as they say. A chuckle from someone, a cousin, maybe. He looked away as he finished. She's proof that not every child turns out the same. But hey, effort counts too. Laughter. Stifled at first, then emboldened. It cracked through the air like a slow rip, opening something inside me I hadn't let breathe in years. Effort counts. I stared at him. At the man who once told me ambition was unattractive in women. At the man who called me impractical, who said war and science were for men with guts, not girls with dreams. I felt my hand tighten around the stem of my water glass, not in rage, in restraint, because I had planned for this moment, but I hadn't expected it to hurt this much. I didn't realize I had stood up until the chair scraped behind me. The laughter still hung in the air, brittle and fading, like smoke after a cheap firework. Someone cleared their throat. A fork clinked against a plate. The kind of hush that doesn't settle, it tightens. I adjusted my dress with one hand, the other resting flat against the tablecloth. My pulse thrummed just beneath the surface, and I could feel 17 pairs of eyes sliding toward me, not with concern, but with curiosity. I hadn't said a word. Not yet. And I wouldn't. I wasn't going to make a scene. That's what they wanted. That's what would feed the story. She overreacted as always. She never could take a joke. I could already hear it. No. If I was going to speak, it wouldn't be tonight. Not here. Not on their terms. I reached for my purse, slowly, methodically. My fingertips grazed the leather flap when I felt it. That gaze. My father. He was watching me now, finally. But not with regret. Not with any trace of apology. There was satisfaction there. The faint curve of a victorious smirk, so slight it might have been imagined. But I saw it. He wanted me to walk out. He wanted this to be my limit, a final confirmation that I was too fragile, too proud, too ungrateful. He had spoken like a judge giving a sentence, not just about me, but to me. And then I sat back down. The chair gave a soft sigh beneath me. I folded my napkin again, took a sip of the lukewarm water, set the glass down without a sound. Let them think I had swallowed it. Let them believe the weight of that speech had anchored me back into place, because they didn't know what was coming. They didn't know the phone in my purse had already buzzed 3 times, each one a coded signal. They didn't know who I was anymore, not really, and I was done letting them define me. The phone buzzed again. I reached into my purse slowly, casually, as if retrieving a mint or a handkerchief. The screen flashed restricted in bold white letters, the kind that didn't leave voicemails, the kind that didn't call unless it mattered. I glanced at the time, 9:02 p.m. Right on schedule. I pressed the green button and raised it to my ear, still seated, still silent. "This is Cole," I said, voice low, calm. There was a pause, then a clipped voice. "Ma'am, this is Major Branson at Langley. Package Echo 17 is active. Authorization required." I leaned forward slightly, eyes fixed on the butter dish in front of me. "Confirming, Alpha Romeo 17, clearance level 5. Execute under Theta Protocol," I answered. My tone was flat, precise, words carved from cold steel. Across the table, forks paused mid-air. Conversations faltered. My father's brow twitched. "Copy that, Commander Cole. Stand by for further instruction," the voice said. And then the line clicked, dead. I slipped the phone back into my purse like it was nothing, like I hadn't just activated a mission protocol from my family's dining room. Silence gripped the room, thick and electric. My uncle stopped chewing. My niece blinked rapidly, unsure if this was some elaborate joke. Mark let out a nervous chuckle. Was that a, work call?" I met his gaze and said nothing. My father's fingers curled slowly around the stem of his wineglass. He opened his mouth, probably to reassert dominance, to demand explanation, but then came the knock, firm, precise, 3 times. All eyes turned toward the front of the house. My mother instinctively reached for her pearls. Dana rose halfway, eyebrows pinched. "Are we expecting anyone else?" The door opened before anyone could move. A man in uniform stepped inside. Black formal dress, silver insignia gleaming under the foyer light. His face was unreadable. His posture flawless. He scanned the room once, then walked straight toward me. I didn't stand. He stopped exactly 3 feet from my chair, clicked his heels, and saluted. "Commander Cole," he said, voice loud and clear, "your presence is requested immediately. The Pentagon is online." Gasps, audible, tangible. The sound of 17 realities cracking at once. I rose slowly, met his eyes, and nodded once. Understood. I adjusted my blazer as I stood, smoothing the fabric like I had done 100 times before, walking into briefing rooms filled with generals and analysts. But this room, this was a different battlefield. The man in uniform remained at my side, eyes forward, hands behind his back. He didn't look at anyone else, only at me. That alone unsettled them more than anything he'd said. I glanced around the table. For once, they were all looking at me, every one of them. No more laughter, no more sideways jokes, just stunned, bewildered silence. My niece's mouth hung slightly open. My cousin looked like he was trying to do mental math. Dana's face had lost all its pleasant colour. Mark was the first to speak, his voice cracking with forced levity. Okay. You got us. Very funny. What is this? Some kind of prank? Are we being filmed?" I looked at him and smiled faintly. "No cameras, just consequences." My father finally rose, slow and stiff, the way men do when they feel control slipping through their fingers. "Erica, what the hell is going on? What is this show?" The officer beside me turned his head toward him, but I raised a hand slightly. "I've been working under direct contract with the Department of Defense for the past 6 years," I said, voice calm and clear. "My team is responsible for classified defense technology that supports both national and global security initiatives." Pause. Let that sink. "I hold a top-level security clearance. I answer directly to the Joint Chiefs. And yes, when the Pentagon calls, I answer." A stunned whisper escaped from someone. My mother's hand covered her mouth. I turned back to my father. "You once said I was proof that not every child turns out right. You're correct. I didn't turn out the way you wanted." I stepped closer, heels echoing on the hardwood. "I turned out better." He tried to speak, but no words came. Just that pinched look, half rage, half confusion. The face of a man watching his constructed version of the world crumble in real time. "Sir," the officer said behind me, "your transport is ready." I gave a small nod, then looked down the table one last time. They weren't laughing now. Somewhere deep inside, a younger version of me stood taller, not because they had changed, but because I finally didn't need them to, and for the first time in my life, my father was speechless. The car was silent for the first 10 minutes. The officer had offered me a ride back to the secured drop point where my official vehicle waited. I declined. I needed air. I needed quiet. I needed her. My mother had followed me out the door just before it closed. She hadn't said anything, not even when the soldier saluted her politely as she stepped into the car beside me. She simply sat, clutching her purse like it was the only solid thing left in her world. She didn't look at me. Not until the car pulled away from the house and the lights disappeared behind us. Then in the dim hum of the back seat, she whispered, "You've changed." I gave a small smile. I had to. She nodded slowly, her knuckles white against her lap. "I always knew you were meant for more. I just didn't know how to protect that." I didn't say anything. There wasn't much to say. But then she added, softer still, "There's something I should have told you years ago." My shoulders tensed. I turned to face her fully. She swallowed hard. "That summer, when you applied for the ROTC program, you got in. The letter arrived." I froze. She kept going, voice trembling, but steady. "Your father opened it before you got home. He read it, then made a call. Told the program you'd changed your mind, said you weren't emotionally stable, that you'd withdrawn." Every inch of my body went still. "I begged him not to," she whispered, "but he said military life wasn't for girls, that it would ruin you. He said if you found out you'd just grow resentful, and he'd rather deal with that than send you into a world where he had no control." The car moved forward, but my breath didn't. All these years, I'd suspected something. That sudden silence from the program, the way no explanation ever came, but hearing it out loud, knowing the truth, had a voice, and that voice was hers, hurt deeper than I expected. "I'm sorry," she said, tears welling up now. "I was weak. I let him convince me it was for your own good." I looked out the window. The darkness outside felt honest. At least it didn't pretend. "When you called me back then," she continued, "you sounded so hopeful. And when nothing arrived, you still tried to stay strong. That strength, it scared him." That part didn't surprise me. She reached for my hand, hesitant. I let her take it. "I never stopped being proud of you, Erica," she said. "I just stopped knowing how to show it." I squeezed her fingers gently, and for the first time in years the pain wasn't mine alone. The invitation I sent was printed on the same ivory cardstock they'd used for my father's birthday dinner. No gold cursive, no fake warmth, just 12 words at the top. "You are invited to attend the National Recognition Ceremony for Commander Erica Cole." Below that, the seal of the Department of Defense, a date, a location, the Hall of Honor at Arlington, and a simple note: "Formal attire required, RSVP not needed, attendance is optional." I didn't expect them to come, and they didn't, but I knew they watched. The ceremony was broadcast quietly on national television, one of those early morning airings between political coverage and military briefings. Not headline news, but enough for the right people to see, enough for them to see. I stood on a black marble stage beneath soft lights, wearing the dark blue of official dress, ribbons pinned, silver insignia gleaming over my heart. Behind me, a 3-star general spoke about resilience, brilliance, and integrity, about the woman who led a covert engineering project that had quietly saved hundreds of lives across 2 continents, a name that had remained in the shadows for years, until now. When he said my name, Commander Erica Cole, the applause wasn't thunderous, but it was sincere. The kind that vibrates not from noise, but from meaning. As I stepped up to accept the medal, I caught a camera lens out of the corner of my eye. CNN, maybe, or one of the local affiliates. Either way, the beam of that red light meant one thing: someone at home was watching. And they were. I later found out that Mark saw it first, sitting in his office, scrolling through channels while waiting for a meeting to start. Dana watched it later, on her phone in the kitchen. My niece reposted the clip with 2 wide-eyed emojis and the caption, "Wait, what?" But it was my father who called, not me, my mother. She told me weeks later that he sat on the edge of the bed, remote in hand, staring at the screen long after the broadcast ended. Said nothing, just stared. No apology came, no letter, no acknowledgement. He didn't need to speak. I had already said everything I needed to, without ever raising my voice. A month after the ceremony, I found myself standing behind the old house again. Not for them, not even for her. For me. The backyard hadn't changed. The pine tree I used to climb was still there, taller now, brittle in the middle but standing. The grass was patchy, and the old wooden bench beneath the tree creaked when I sat down. It always had. This was where I used to hide, where I'd read science books under a blanket, whisper equations to myself, sketch designs I never showed anyone, where I cried the day that acceptance letter never came, where I first imagined what escape might look like. And now it was where I let it all go. I pulled the medal from my coat pocket. Small, heavy, engraved with my name and rank. The weight didn't bother me, it never had. What did was what it represented. Every sacrifice, every lonely night, every time I had to choose silence over vindication. I placed it gently on the bench beside me, not as a symbol, just as a reminder that I had earned everything they thought I couldn't. A breeze rustled through the branches above. Somewhere inside the house, a door creaked. I didn't turn. I wasn't here to be seen. I was here because I no longer needed to be. For so long, I'd chased something from this place, approval, recognition, maybe even love. But sitting here now, I realized the truth. I had already become the woman I needed, and she didn't live in this house anymore. I stood up, leaving the medal on the bench, not in bitterness but in peace, as if returning a stone I no longer needed to carry. And as I walked away, the wind behind me was soft, not pushing, just present, the way grace often is.